Everyone in the village of Odupe knew Adanna's name, but not for the reasons she wished. They said she was too proud, too strange, too cursed. Old women would shake their heads whenever she passed, whispering behind woven fans. Children would pause their play, their laughter fading as her shadow crossed the dusty path. And the men, they would lower their eyes, not out of respect, but fear of what they didn't understand. They said Adanna could see things others could not, that she spoke to the wind, and the wind answered back. Some nights, when the moon hung like a silver bowl over the palm trees, the villagers would hear her voice carried on the breeze, soft, singing, almost sorrowful. They would close their doors quickly and murmur prayers, because in Odupe, a woman who spoke with spirits was a woman best left alone. And yet, when people saw her, tall, graceful, with eyes the color of river stones, there was something about her that pulled at their heart. She carried herself like someone born from silence and thunder both. But beauty could not save her from the stories that followed her name. Her mother wept quietly each dawn. Her father, a proud farmer, no longer looked men in the eye at the market. And every time a family came with a bride price for another girl, Adanna's mother would sigh and whisper, "When will it be my daughter's turn?" No answer ever came. Adanna knew what they said. She heard the whispers slither through the air like snakes in dry grass, but she did not hide. She stood tall, her head wrapped in bright red cloth, her feet bare against the earth. When a neighbor mocked her for being unmarried, Adanna only smiled and said, "The wind carries truth faster than gossip." The women frowned. The men spat in the dust. But the wind, it laughed softly through the trees, as if it agreed. Seasons turned. Rain came and went. Girls younger than Adanna were being wed, their laughter echoing through the evening as drums sang for them. Adanna watched from afar, her face unreadable, her heart heavy, yet proud. She spent her days helping her father in the fields, grinding millet with her mother, and at night she would sit alone beneath the iroko tree, staring at the stars that refused to leave her company. Sometimes she thought she saw faces in those stars, people watching her, whispering her name in languages older than the earth. She would close her eyes then, trying to silence the voices, but they always came back. But one night, the night the drums called to the moon and the air tasted of rain, a stranger stepped into Odupe, and everything began to change. The villagers didn't hear him arrive. He came quietly, like the wind before a storm. The only sound was the soft jingle of charms around his wrist and the whisper of his footsteps against the red earth. The firelight from the evening gathering flickered against his dark skin, revealing a face both kind and unreadable. He wore a traveler's cloak, dusted with the scent of long roads and forest smoke. His name was Isis, and though he said little at first, his eyes carried the weight of many journeys. When Adanna saw him for the first time, she froze, not from fear, but from something deeper, as if the wind itself had paused between them. Isis' gaze met hers across the glow of the fire. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to fall silent. Even the drums slowed. The elders pretended not to notice. The children whispered to each other, "The cursed one is staring at the traveler." But Isis didn't look away. He nodded once, almost as if he had found what he had been searching for. That night, while the villagers sang under the moon, Adanna sat alone, her heart restless for the first time in many years. The wind whispered through the leaves again, but this time it did not speak her name. It spoke his. No one in Odupe knew who he truly was, or what shadow followed him from the forest beyond the hills. But soon they would learn, and Adanna's quiet world would never be the same again. He called himself Eze, a tall man with quiet eyes and a voice that rolled like thunder beneath calm skies. He came with the scent of rain on his clothes and the patience of a man who had walked too many lonely roads. He said he was only passing through, seeking rest before crossing the forest road. But there was something about him, the way he spoke with the elders, the way he listened when the drummers played, that made the villagers uneasy. He didn't rush to speak, didn't try to please. He simply was. And when his gaze met Adanna's across the firelight, the world seemed to pause. The flames flickered, painting his face in gold and shadow. Her heart, steady and still for so long, stumbled. She tried to look away, but his eyes held hers like a secret. That night, the women whispered among themselves, hiding giggles behind calabashes of palm wine. Does he not know who she is? Perhaps he's blind, or cursed himself. But Eze wasn't blind. He saw what others couldn't. The quiet dignity behind her solitude, the courage in her silence. He saw a woman whose spirit had not yet bent under the weight of gossip. In the days that followed, he stayed longer than anyone expected. He said the forest path was not yet safe, but everyone knew the forest had been silent for months. He helped Adanna's father mend the broken fence near the yam field. His hands were strong but gentle, his movements sure. When the old man offered thanks, Isis simply smiled and said, "A man should not eat in a village whose fences he has not helped repair." The elders liked his manners. The children followed him around. But the women, they watched with growing suspicion. They saw the way Adanna's steps grew lighter when Eze entered the courtyard, the way her laughter, soft and rare, began to return, like rain after a long dry season. Some said she had bewitched him. Others said the man had come to test her. But Adanna didn't care for whispers anymore. For the first time, she was not alone in her world. They began to walk together by the river in the evenings. The air smelled of wet clay and wild hibiscus. The current hummed softly against the stones as dragonflies danced in the last light. Eze would ask her questions that no one else dared to. Do you really hear the wind? Do you see the things others don't? And does it frighten you? Adanna hesitated. Then she told him of the dreams, flashes of things before they happened. How she would wake with trembling hands, knowing whose roof would leak, whose harvest would fail, whose child would fall ill. Eze listened without judgment. His eyes softened, but his silence was heavy, as if he were measuring something only he could see. When she asked him, "Do you believe me?" he answered quietly, "I believe the wind doesn't speak to everyone, but it chooses those who can bear its truth." That evening, as the river shimmered under the fading sun, Adanna smiled, a real smile this time, and for a moment Eze smiled too. But as a reflection rippled in the water, his face grew still. He had seen something in her eyes or in the water's mirror that made his pulse quicken. The color drained from his face, though he tried to hide it. When Adanna turned to ask what was wrong, he simply said, "It's nothing. The light of the river plays tricks sometimes." But when he looked again, he saw it, a faint shimmer around her, like mist rising from fire. And in that shimmer, the outline of a shadow, something watching, waiting, claiming her as its own. No one knew what Eze saw in her eyes that night by the river, but from that moment on, he never truly slept again. Adanna told him everything. Her voice trembled at first, but the more she spoke, the more the weight lifted from her chest. She told Eze of the visions, those flashes that came uninvited, stealing her sleep and her peace. How danger whispered to her before it arrived. How she would wake, drenched in sweat, the sound of rushing water or crackling fire still echoing in her ears. Once she had dreamed of a great flood, brown, churning waters swallowing the yam fields and creeping into the huts. 2 weeks later, the river broke its banks, devouring a farmer's home. Another time, she dreamed of fire racing through dry palms, turning fruit and leaves into ash. 3 nights later, it happened exactly as she had seen. From then on, the villagers avoided her eyes. They said she called misfortune, that her dreams brought ruin. Even when she warned them to move their grain before the rains, they hissed and said she wants to see us suffer. That is why she speaks. Adanna stopped warning them. She stopped speaking of the things she saw, but the dreams never stopped coming. Eze listened in silence, his brow furrowed, his fingers tracing the rim of his calabash. When she finished, her voice breaking, he said softly, "The one who warns of rain is not the cause of the storm." The words sank deep, like seeds in fertile soil. For the first time in her life, Adanna felt understood. She looked at him with tearful eyes and whispered, "You don't think I'm cursed?" He smiled. Slow, steady, reassuring. "A curse hides in darkness, but you, Adanna, you carry light." Something within her stirred. a warmth she had never known, hope. Days turned into weeks, and Easy did not leave. He helped her father tend to the fields, carried water for her mother, and sat by the fire each evening, listening to the village storytellers. But no story captured him more than Adanna's laughter, rare and gentle, like a drumbeat after long silence. Then one evening, as the sun bled into gold behind the palm trees, Easy walked into Adanna's home and spoke with her father. The conversation was brief, but when her father emerged, tears glistened in his old eyes. He turned to Adanna and said in a trembling voice, "My child, the stranger has asked for your hand." For a moment she thought she had misheard. Her knees went weak, her breath caught. She, the woman no one wanted, the one they called cursed, someone had chosen her. Easy stood quietly in the doorway, watching her reaction. There was no grand gesture, no promise shouted to the heavens, just a steady gaze that said, "I see you." Her mother clasped her hands together in joy, whispering thanks to the ancestors. The news spread through Odupe like Harmattan fire. The wedding came swiftly. It was simple but joyous, the sound of drums rolling like thunder, the air thick with the scent of roasted yam and palm wine. Children danced, women ululated, men nodded with cautious approval. Yet beneath the laughter, there were whispers, always whispers. Will marries a cursed woman? Perhaps he is cursed too. No ordinary man would want her. Ezi seemed not to hear. He kept his hand around Adanna's, his thumb tracing small circles on her palm, as if to remind her she was safe. That night, under the light of a pale moon, they danced slowly as the drums softened and the fire crackled low. Adanna's heart felt full for the first time. The village had called her cursed, but maybe, just maybe, the curse had lifted. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Easy carried a secret darker than any shadow that had ever followed her name. And soon that secret would awaken. After their marriage, Odupe seemed to hold its breath. For a time, all was peaceful. Adanna's laughter returned to the courtyards. The villagers, though still wary, began to greet her again. Even the elders said, "Perhaps her curse has passed." But peace in Odupe never lasted long. It began with whispers in the night. The goats bleated for no reason. The dogs barked at shadows no one could see. Then the chickens started dying, one by one, each morning found stiff and cold, their eyes wide open as if they'd seen something unspeakable. Soon after, the river that had always run clear turned cloudy, thick as if stirred by unseen hands. The fishermen spat into the water and muttered, "This is not natural. The river goddess has turned her face away." Children began to wake screaming from dreams they could not explain, crying of dark figures standing by their mats, whispering in voices like rustling leaves. And every time it happened, Adanna would find Easy standing outside, staring into the night, his body still as stone, his eyes following something only he could see. When she asked him what was wrong, he would simply say, "The forest doesn't sleep easily." But there was something else, something in his tone that made her skin prickle. His voice no longer rolled like thunder beneath calm skies. It trembled as though echoing from far away. One night, Adanna awoke to silence. No crickets, no wind, not even the night birds sang. The mat beside her was empty. Her heart pounded. She stepped outside, the moonlight spilling silver across the ground. From beyond the village came a faint sound. Drums, soft, rhythmic, distant, like the heartbeat of something ancient. She followed the sound, barefoot through the whispering grass. The path wound toward the forest edge, where the great Iroko tree stood, a tree older than any memory, its trunk wide as a house, its branches clawing at the stars. The drums grew louder as she neared, their rhythm strange, almost mournful. Then she saw him, Easy, kneeling before a small clay pot, set upon the roots of the Iroko. His hands trembled as he whispered into the darkness, words she could not understand. But it was not his whisper that froze her blood. It was what he was whispering too. A shadow hovered before him, its edges rippling though there was no wind. It swayed, alive but formless, as if smoke had learned to breathe. Adanna's voice cracked the silence. "Is, who are you speaking to?" He didn't move. The drums stopped. The air thickened, heavy as river mud. Then the shadow turned, and in the flicker of moonlight, it had Ease's face. Another him, eyes hollow, lips curved in a knowing smile. Adanna stumbled back, her breath caught in her throat. The two faces of Ease, the living man, and the thing before him seemed to mirror one another in the dark. The shadow spoke first. Its voice was a whisper and a growl all at once. "You should not have come, Adanna." Eze looked up at her, tears in his eyes, and whispered, "It's not what it seems." But the ground beneath them trembled, and the air filled with the scent of rain and iron. The shadow's hands stretched toward her, long and black as smoke. Adanna's mind screamed to run, but her feet would not move. Her heart broke and burned all at once. No one could have told her that the man she loved, the one who saw light in her darkness, had been walking hand in hand with the very thing that fed on shadows. What she discovered that night would shatter her heart and save her soul. The truth hit Adanna like a blow to the chest. The man she had loved, the one who spoke softly, who saw her when no one else did, was gone. The real Ease had never crossed the forest road alive. The night he entered Odupe, he was already lost to the shadows that dwell between worlds. What knelt before her now was not a man at all, but a spirit, ancient and cunning, wearing his shape like a mask. Its eyes gleamed with hunger, and its voice coiled through the air like smoke. "You wanted someone to see you," it whispered, every word dripping with mockery. "Now you will see only me." The forest seemed to lean closer, listening. The air grew cold, sharp as the edge of broken glass. Adanna's breath came in ragged bursts, her heart pounding in her chest like a drumbeat calling for courage she wasn't sure she had. She stumbled back, the earth damp beneath her bare feet, the smell of rain and iron thick in her nostrils. The spirit took a step forward, graceful, terrible, beautiful. Its form shimmered, shifting between shadow and the face of the man she had loved. "Do not fight me, Adanna," it hissed. "Your power belongs to me now." It called me here. Tears welled in her eyes. For a heartbeat, she wanted to give in, to believe this thing could love her, as Ease had once done. But then, somewhere deep inside, she heard another voice, her grandmother's, soft as the rustle of dried leaves. "Even the Mohong has power, only when the sun allows it to shine." Adanna straightened. Her fear trembled, but did not break. She lifted her hands toward the heavens and began to chant the old words her grandmother had taught her long ago, the ones she had sworn never to use. At first, her voice was small, barely a whisper. Then it grew, steady, fierce, rising like the wind before a storm. The ground quaked, the air swirled. The wind rose, wrapping around her like invisible hands. The spirit shrieked, its form twisting, unraveling into tendrils of darkness. Lightning split the sky, blinding and white, striking the Iroko tree with a sound that shook the heavens. The tree groaned and split in two, fire crawling through its hollow trunk. The shadow screamed one last time, a sound like the death of 1,000 echoes, before dissolving into dust and smoke. Adanna collapsed to her knees, her body trembling, her voice raw. When she opened her eyes, the forest was still again. The air smelled of rain and burnt wood, and in the ashes where the spirit had stood lay a single thing, Ease's pendant, glowing faintly in the dawn light. She reached for it with shaking hands, pressing it to her chest. The pendant was warm, almost alive, as if carrying the last heartbeat of the man who had once worn it. Tears fell freely down her cheeks, not of fear or grief, but of something deeper, release. The wind whispered through the trees once more, gentle now, almost kind, as if saying, "You are free." She looked toward the rising sun. The light touched her face, washing away the shadows that had followed her all her life. And in that moment of loss, Adanna gained something no curse could steal: the strength to stand alone, the courage to see her own light, and the wisdom to know that love built on darkness can never survive the dawn. She returned to the village at dawn, walking barefoot through the mist, her dress torn, her hair loose and heavy with the scent of smoke and rain. The people of Odupe woke to see her emerging from the forest, alive, silent, and glowing faintly beneath the new sun. At first, they drew back in fear. They had buried her in whispers long ago, written her off as cursed. But the woman who came back was not the Adanna they remembered. Her steps were steady, her gaze calm, and when she spoke, her voice carried the kind of peace that only those who have faced darkness and lived can carry. The villagers asked what had happened in the forest, but Adanna only smiled and said, "Some battles are not fought with hands, but with heart." They did not understand, not fully, but they listened, and slowly their fear turned to respect. She built a small hut by the edge of the river, near the roots of the Iroko, where her life had changed forever. There she lived quietly, her days filled with work and her nights with stories. When people came to her, trembling from nightmares, haunted by guilt or loss, Adanna would listen patiently. Then she would say, "To be feared is not to be cursed. The true curse is to believe you are unworthy of love." Those words spread far beyond Odupe. Travelers began to arrive from distant villages, bringing gifts of kola nuts and cowrie shells in exchange for her counsel. Mothers brought their daughters to sit by her fire. Fathers came seeking guidance for restless sons. And children, oh, the children, they adored her. They would gather around her every evening, eyes wide, faces glowing in the flicker of the flames. She told them stories of love that turned to betrayal, of promises that carried hidden teeth, of beauty that blinded, and truth that healed. Each tale carried a lesson, sharper than a spear, yet gentle as a mother's hand. Sometimes, when the fire dimmed and the night turned still, she would fall quiet, her gaze drifting toward the forest. The wind would rise softly through the palm trees, carrying faint laughter, a sound light as a breath, deep as a memory. Some said it was Ease's spirit, freed from the shadows at last, watching over her from the place where dawn never ends. Others said it was only the wind. But Adanna would smile, close her eyes and whisper, "The wind carries truth faster than gossip." And so her story became a blessing, a reminder whispered from mouth to mouth, village to village, that love is not found in the eyes that see you, but in the courage to see yourself. And when the night grows long and the wind sighs through the trees of Odupe, they say you can still hear that laughter, soft, distant and free, dancing with the voice of the woman who was once called cursed, but who became the keeper of light. The fire crackles low, and the storyteller's voice softens. Children lean closer, their faces flickering in the glow, eyes wide as moons. Even the elders stay silent, for the tale of Adanna is not one of sorrow, but of awakening. The night wind rustles the palm leaves, carrying the faint scent of rain and memory. And then the storyteller says, "Remember this, my children. The heart that hungers for love must first learn to see its own worth. For even a stranger may carry truth in disguise, but only wisdom can tell love from illusion." The drums in the distance fall quiet. Only the fire remains, its glow warm against the darkness. And somewhere in that quiet, as the flames whisper to the wind, you can almost hear her voice, calm, sure, and unbroken, reminding all who listen that even in the deepest night, the heart that knows its own light can never be truly cursed.